Hey, what is up, guys? It is Slcmof here, back again with another video, and back on the channel is Alex, aka High Top Films. And you guys may recall, we've actually done a video before on my channel. It was about a year ago. I'll link that down in the description below. That was a little bit more podcast style. We went for almost 2 hours. We talked about Hollywood. We talked about film school, a lot of different things that you guys, if you are a fan of High Top Films, are probably interested in. But today I wanted to talk about his forthcoming film, Jason, which I know that my audience will be interested in. Very, very excited. You can see the background. He's rocking it. Before we started, he had to switch it out, and so we were on hold there until we could get that background switched out. So wanted to talk about that, and also The Plumber. Let's first start with that. So in case you guys are unaware, Alex made a film called The Plumber. It's a short film on YouTube. I'll link that down in the description below as well. And my understanding is it's in the top 10 of IMDb short films that were reviewed last year. I just wanted you to kind of take a chance to recap that, how that experience was, what you learned from it, and just sort of recap that whole experience and how the film was received.
Yeah, sure, man. It was on Letterboxd, not on
I'm sorry.
IMDb.
Thank you.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. I wish it was on both. That'd be really cool.
Right?
No, but it was crazy, man. Making that movie with John Graves, Josh Bullock, and Francesco De Maio, who played the plumber. It was weird because it was like during the height of the pandemic, right? Like we couldn't go anywhere. And we kind of just would see each other and just we had done a monologue. I had written a monologue for Francesco just to perform in some competition back when he was living in LA. And then he comes to me, he's like, "Hey, you think we could like turn this into something more?" And I was like, "Hell yeah," because I had such fun writing that. And then it was kind of just like making that movie was like a fever dream. Like I barely slept. We would just be up till all hours of the night making this in various people's houses and apartments, and then we'd edit the same day that we'd shoot. We'd make like rough edits of what we just shot, like kind of Chris Nolan style,
Wow.
which I
Very
always
cool.
like. I always like to do that, to keep it fresh in a sense.
So
So
that's how
then,
Chris
yeah,
Nolan does it? I didn't know that.
yeah, he likes to
Like
like
he
go
edits the
get,
dailies, like as the dailies come, he edits them right away. Interesting.
yeah, yeah, with his editor. I doubt it's like the final edit, but he
Of
goes
course,
in
of
and
course.
yeah. But I feel like that's good because it keeps it fresh and it keeps it what you envision the day you shot it. You don't have to like wait a month and then try to recapture that. I like to just kind of roll off because I shoot for the edit usually. Like I shoot thinking about how it's gonna cut together. But yeah, man, when it fucking blew up on Letterboxd and there's so many reviews, which is just crazy, good and bad, which is awesome. And then to see that list come out and for us to be on it with like David Sandberg and for us to be on it with Riz Ahmed was on the same list, and then you look, it's like Riz Ahmed's face, who I don't know if he won the Oscar or was nominated that year, but it's Riz Ahmed's face, and then below his face is Francesco's face. It was so surreal and weird, and forever grateful. It was really, really cool. It was really cool. We always joke, we call ourselves number seven all the time behind the scenes. If we're screwing up, we'll be like, yeah, remember guys, we're number seven on the list. But yeah, it was wonderful.
That's awesome, man. And speaking of some of those reviews, I mean, the reviews that I've seen in the comment section and on Letterboxd, they seem to me to be overwhelmingly positive. But when you do see those negative reviews, the main one that I saw was that like it was overacted, seemed to be the main
Yeah.
negative review. Do you take offense to that, or do you more just recognize that you made a stylistic choice and you just sort of take it on
Mhm.
the face, like, hey, this was the choice that I made,
Yes.
and some people will like it, some won't, but this is the way I wanted to do it.
I hate when they're directed towards Francesco, like he's overacting because it wasn't his choice. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
how you directed him.
Like, yeah, anytime, anything he was doing, which he was doing it all so brilliantly. If anything, he would be the one who'd be like, "Hey, should we take it back a notch?" And I'd be like, "No, this is a fantasy in a sense. This is a deluded crazy man screaming for attention, so he's going to overplay it and present a character. The character of the plumber is presenting a character in a sense. So it's like a really kind of hard performance to do. But yeah, so I usually never take offense when they're like, "Oh, it was shot stupidly. The music was bad, editing was too slow." Like that's criticism, and that's awesome. But when they come for Francesco specifically, and they're like, "Oh, he overacted. He's a bad actor," that bothers me a lot because it's like, no, it was completely on me.
Totally. And what do you think you did learn from the plumber?
So much, dude. Just
Yeah, really? That's
uh,
great.
I think just I think that was the first kind of short that we made that had somewhat of a structure. Like a lot of our other shorts, if you go back on the channel, are these surrealist David Lynch style kind of nightmares, dreams. And The Plumber has elements of surrealism, but it also has like a pretty standard story, so to speak, even though it's like stylized as all hell. But I think I learned where my weaknesses are specifically and like what to focus on more so next time. With Jason, exactly. So like one big thing is I think that Act Two of The Plumber, while we were shooting it, I was so worried it was really weak when he's in the apartment. For
Hmm.
those of you who haven't watched it, go watch it,
Link down
please.
below in the description.
Link down below. Yeah, but when he's in the apartment, right, when he's interacting with the frat bro, um, that I was so worried would be the weakest element of the short for some reason while we were shooting it, that I was like so hyper focused on that I kind of neglected worrying about what came after that for a bit. Um, and then when now I watch it and I'm like, I actually think Act Two is the strongest part of the movie, and we should have focused more on the pace of getting into the climax, kind of thing. Just stuff like that. I learned so much.
That's awesome, man. That's great, especially so early into your career to be learning that much from a short too. Yet alone, not even a feature. That's
Yeah, man.
incredible. So you had tweeted. I'll just read it here for the audience in case they haven't seen it. You said, "Growing up poor, having parents who struggled with addiction, and feeling very angry, very alone, I always wanted to tell my story. Now, hopefully, with your help, I get to tell part of it through a character I deeply love. This is Jason." I thought I would just sort of read that to highlight, and without getting too much into the plot of the film itself, obviously, we don't want spoilers. We're all, excited to see the movie as it comes out. But I just wanted to sort of have you touch on why you're making this movie and what inspired you to, hit with this character next.
I think it's kind of like what I said in the tweet almost, where for so long when I was a kid, when you're a kid, you think, I think even as an adult, you somewhat think this, but when you're a kid, you think that like your experience is so unique, right? Like you think that the kind of pain and the trauma that you're going through and that every child goes through in some way, uh, you think it's like singular to you. But then you grow up and you realize that there are so many people who are afraid to kind of talk about addiction and growing up with parents with addiction issues and substance abuse problems. And I wanted to just tell a story that is about what that kind of childhood, what that kind of having to grow up really quick, and also growing up in like not having all the money in the world, and not being able to have the stuff that all the other kids have, and having to kind of fend for yourself from an early age. I always wanted to tell a story about that in some way, because it is in a lot of ways my story. And I think I had this idea that from the first appearance of Jason Todd post Crisis, when he's stealing the tires,
Yeah.
um, you go back into his apartment and he's by himself, and it's just this like trap house, essentially. And he like lights up a cig and he's 12 years old. And I was watching that. I was reading that. Probably in high school I was reading that. And then I was like, yo, like there is so much before that moment where he meets Batman. You know what I mean? What is that kid's life? And they've touched on it in New 52 and Rebirth, but I think that like there's so much of that, and there's so much of the relationship that he has to his mother, and that kind of longing, and her substance issues, and the kind of semi-abusive relationship he has with Willis Todd. And I took those kind of bullet points that are in the comic books, right? And then I just injected it with so much of my own experience, memories I have of when my parents were struggling with addiction, and moments I have where I felt so angry that I was stuck in this situation. There was nothing I could do to break free in my mind. And I so wished that someone like Batman would drop down and tell me that it's going to be okay. And I was like, I think this is the perfect opportunity to create this vulnerable character study of Jason Todd without ever breaking the character, but injecting enough of myself and my own personal experience into him to make something that hopefully rings true so that all the other kids who felt alone, who feel alone, who want Batman to come save them, um, they can see that, I think it's an experience that so many people have, and not one that we talk about enough. If that makes sense. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, not at all. That's all great. And one thing that I wanted to ask you too is it feels so much like the genre of the comic book film is undergoing a transformation right now. And and with Iron Man in 2008 and The Dark Knight 2008 and these other movies, the movies seem to, at least in my view, focus heavily on the hero and his or her foil, right? So like Batman versus the Joker, Iron Man, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And one of the big things that I feel like I'm seeing in the industry, which is really great actually, is with films like Joker that are in-depth character pieces that are not necessarily about a villain per se, although you could say maybe Thomas Wayne is a villain in Joker, but he's really not. Like, it really is just about Joker and his life. And the Batman, while of course Riddler and Penguin are in the movie, and none of us has seen the movie yet, unfortunately, but we will be very soon, it feels very similar, where it very much so feels like they're focusing a lot on Bruce Wayne as a character and his psyche and his inner battles. And my sense of this film that you're working on right now, Jason, is that this film is very similar to that. It very much so is a character piece and deep dive into Jason. Is that kind of how you're approaching it?
Oh, 100%, man. So, but I'll just give the background about how this came to be
Yeah,
about
please
real
do.
quick. So back in high school, we worked on we had the idea to do something with Jason Todd, and I think back then I didn't really know why I was so attached to Jason, because it wasn't really the Red Hood stuff. I mean, I love Under the Red Hood, but it wasn't the fact that he was like a badass. But I felt this like almost emotional, I don't want to say spiritual, but this like deep connection to the kind of the one scene in Under the Red Hood where he is like, I'm not mad at you for not saving me. It's because he took me away from you. And he sounds like a child. And basically all he's saying is like, Batman, Dad, love me, you know?
Right.
Then I was like, that is so fascinating. That is so fascinating. And that is so real and raw.
It's not
Um,
something you see a lot in this genre.
no, at
Yeah.
all. And so then we did this little Jason short film back in the day that none of us were very proud of, but it was a good learning experience, and it's nothing to do with what we're doing now. But from then I was like, you know what? I think I tried with that fan film to make something I thought the audience would want to see, in the sense that it was like a mystery and it was stylized and Harley was there, and it was there was action and comic booky stuff. And then I was like, as soon as we finished making that, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna give up on telling this story that I want to tell with Jason. So I had to look inward, I think, a lot, and I was like, okay. And then I came up with just this idea to make a three. It's kind of, I would say it's a 3 hour movie that we're breaking up into chapters, I would say. So we're only financing chapter one right now, and it stands on its own. And then chapter two and chapter three, hopefully we get to do if people like chapter one, you know.
All right.
And
So you're doing the Dune model. Okay, I like it. I
pretty
like
much,
it. Cool.
yeah, yeah. Because we're also just like so in over our heads already, because this is the biggest thing we've ever done. Like usually our budgets are like $2, like $2.
Yeah.
Um, so we want to make sure that we tell chapter one to the best of its ability, and then we go into chapter two and chapter
Sure.
three. But yeah, I just want to tell this story that's basically every chapter is without spoiling too much. It's taking these different parental figures in Jason's life and focusing on how they define him, and how he's kind of a passive character a lot of the time in his own life, because he accepts love that he definitely doesn't deserve. He accepts kind of he accepts abuse in a lot of ways, from different parental figures. And the question I want the audience to have, if we do chapter one right, without spoiling too much. I've already said Batman's in chapter one, so
He is? I didn't
yeah,
know that. Wow. Okay.
Batman is in chapter one. I can say that 100%. But
Wow.
and we're
All right,
working on
guys. Link down in the description below to donate.
yes, link down below. Yeah, and the big question that I hope everyone has a different answer for. I'm not going to say my opinion on it, you know.
Sure.
Is Jason in that alley, when in Crime Alley, when Batman finds Jason Todd, right? Is it a continuance of this cycle of abuse that Jason has subjected himself to his whole life by going with
Mm.
Batman? Or is it progress? Is he growing, or is he staying the same? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What does that entail? And if I can make the audience, the one goal I have is if I can make the audience care about this version of Jason so much that you never, ever, ever want to see death in the family happen to him, then we've done our job right, you know? Because so much of Jason Todd, people care about what happens after he dies because, you know, people voted to kill him. And that's fascinating right there, right? Like, in a metatextual sense, I'm writing for a character that people voted to kill off,
Yes,
you
you
know?
are.
And giving that guy empathy and giving that guy so much, why would anyone ever want to kill this guy? You know, this kid's just abused and he's just struggling for love and he's angry at the world like every kid is, you know? And yeah, sorry to get all to go on
No,
these
I love that.
rambles,
That's
but
so fascinating. And actually, I was looking into that story, and it's so interesting. That poll that determined Jason would die, the choice to kill him won by like a couple hundred votes. But interestingly, there was only like 25,000 votes total. It was like a very small poll.
yeah,
Right now we think about if this were to happen today, it would probably be a Twitter poll with millions of votes. It
yeah,
literally, to your point, is like nobody even cared. Like not even 20 some odd thousand people voted in this poll to kill this character who's now one of the most beloved characters because he was killed. I feel like he's more popular, and that's a
yeah,
really interesting thing as to why that is. And with the Joker, for instance, and like I said with the film Joker, that character already had such a huge cult following and fandom, and so many people were interested in that character, and people weren't really interested in Jason until he was killed, oddly enough, by the Joker. And it's almost like the Joker, by touching that character, made him a higher value character in the minds of fans. And I feel
yep.
like what your film is accomplishing is making Jason be a character that can stand on his own without the Joker and without what happened to him in Death in the Family and to some extent Under the Red Hood.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. And it's also completely about telling the story of Gotham City from the point of view of a young man. Jason, for the bulk of our, without giving too much away, for the bulk of our series, Jason's around, I'd say 17 to 22 years old. Like he's a little older than usual when he
Sure.
usually meets Batman. Um, but I think it's like showing the world of Gotham, our world of Gotham, through the eyes of someone young, showing what Batman's like to a street kid. Because you got to think, man, like if Jason grew up in the slums of Gotham City, he was a criminal. You know what I mean? He did criminal stuff to survive. It wasn't because he necessarily enjoyed it or wanted to do it. It was just to get by. And Batman's out here kind of like this myth almost, taking out people that he probably considers friends and family. So why would he go with Batman? He's basically every time he puts on that Robin suit, without giving too much away, every time he puts on that Robin suit, he's basically fighting his father in a sense. Like he's fighting Willis Todd. He's fighting all the people he grew up around. He's fighting himself. By donning that Robin costume, he is essentially fighting the criminals that he was. And that right there is fucking, you know what I mean? That is so
That's
fascinating.
already a gold mine that hasn't been explored in the mythos because
Exactly.
there is sort of this modern critique of Batman that he is fundamentally like beating up low income and mentally ill people. And
And
that's it's something that hasn't been explored yet, and it sounds like your film is going to do that at least to some extent, right?
yeah, and I don't think I don't want to I don't necessarily agree with that sentiment that always
Sure.
gets tweeted
Sure.
that Bruce doesn't have empathy for those less fortunate than him. But I do agree that to people like Jason and to who surrounds Jason before he meets Bruce, that's totally probably what it seems like. That's probably how they talk about Batman, you know? And doing it from the perspective, I think the only way to do it without being necessarily preachy or giving into the fan kind of criticism of the character of Batman, I mean, is to just do it from the perspective of Jason Todd, who grew up poor, who grew up surrounded by those less fortunate than Bruce Wayne, you know, who basically grew up in a ghetto, who grew up in this area that is being gentrified in our show currently, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And just not even calling attention to the fact that all that's happening in the background, but just really locking in the camera, locking in the story on like this is Jason Todd's perspective on everything, you know? You never will never see Batman, I can say this, you'll never see Batman in the show unless you're looking at him through Jason's eyes, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like visually
Mm-hmm.
speaking. Like the way the way that the audience, if we do our jobs right, should
Sure.
perceive Bruce and Batman is, and every character is point of view driven narrative through Jason. How does Jason feel about this? When he looks up at Batman, what does that feel like to the audience? I just want to put them in the head of someone who is the polar opposite of Bruce Wayne in a lot of sense, but then has the same kind of anger that Bruce Wayne had, you know? And that's sorry to keep rambling, but I'm just really excited to do it. It's
I
like
can
my
tell
dream
you are, and
project.
I
Yeah.
can't wait to see it because of how excited I can tell you are about it and how unique this will be in this space. And look, I mean, we've been getting comic book movies now consistently multiple per year since 2008. And before that, we had got comic book movies. Most of them weren't very good, with a couple of standouts that were good. But since 2008, we've been really spoiled with incredible comic book movies. But that's not to say that the genre, at least in my view, needs an overhaul. And of course, I know that you would be the first to acknowledge that you're standing against Goliath, and I don't think that you view yourself as in competition with Matt Reeves or any like.
No, no,
I
no.
know that you have a very mature sort of view in that sense, but I also am just really excited that you're willing to take this risk, and also you're fully acknowledging like, hey, this will be different than other comic book movies you've seen, and that's okay. And I think we need a
Oh,
lot more of that in this space.
100%. Like, I'll say this right now. If comparatively, I think I wouldn't even. What I'm trying to think the best way to word this. I wouldn't even call Jason, especially Chapter One, a comic book movie. Not that there's anything wrong with being a comic book movie, whatsoever. Obviously, my whole career is based off loving comic book movies, but uh, literally. But I would really just call it kind of like a grounded crime, a grounded drama with elements of a crime thriller, I would say, is what it is, you know? It,
Yeah,
it was never like, let's throw in as many Easter eggs. And there are Easter eggs because we're obviously fanboys and we love Batman
of
and we love
course.
Robin. But it was kind of just like, let's take it from the first scene. I won't spoil what it is. Let's take it, put you in the headspace of Jason Todd, and then set you off into the world. Like where did Jason's telling the story? Jason's guiding the audience. Jason's guiding us, you know? And so what that entails, I think, especially since a large portion of chapter one takes place before he meets Bruce Wayne, I think what that entails is changing genre, you know?
Right.
And I think just if we're ever lucky to get to do a chapter two, that would be kind of taking, I'm trying not to spoil things, but that would take place heavily when he's Robin, the whole thing, you know, with Batman. And then that is where it becomes kind of the standard comic book iconography. Still in this drama sense of there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of emotion and a lot of pathos and a lot of empathy. But
Sure, yeah, and you could say the same
yeah,
thing for Joker, where he
yeah,
doesn't really
exactly.
become the Joker until the very end of that movie, and I think that is a model that fans are more than willing to accept and be open to in this era. So, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. You guys all know High Top Films. I'll link his channel down in the description below. But most importantly, I'm going to link a couple of things. One, The Plumber. Check out The Plumber if you haven't already. It's got over 100,000 views on YouTube. And it, like Alex was saying, it's one of the most reviewed letterbox short films. So please check it out. And that will be linked down in the description below. I'll link his YouTube channel and also a link to our podcast that we did in the past, which is more about the industry more broadly. And I think you guys, if you enjoyed this, you'll probably enjoy that conversation as well. So, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. Any other last words you'd like to share about Jason?
Yeah. I think that, guys, check out the teaser for Jason, check out the Indiegogo page. If and I completely understand if you can't donate because I've been there. I think we all have. There's projects you want to support, but you can't financially. And all I ask is that, talk about it with your friends, share it around, send it to your uncle, send it to whoever. It's my dream project, and I promise all of you that I will not let the character of Jason down. And our goal is to give him the love that he so desperately needed in his life. So
Yeah,
thank
guys,
you.
and even giving a thumbs up on the trailer, giving a thumbs up on even this video, and just helping get reach around the project is a great way to do that as well, in addition to donating financially. But if you would, I will link that down in the description below if you'd like to contribute to Jason. Alex, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll do another podcast again here soon. Maybe we'll touch base again once you drop, Jason, and
Hell yeah, man.
we will chat then. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, and check all those links down in the description below. My name is Slcmof. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.